Got it.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good night I bid to everyone today. And for those who are in other countries, good morning to especially to our Professor Parviz Morewedge. He asked me to call him Amu Parviz. How are you, Amu Parviz?
Wonderful. I'm
Alhamdulillah.
delighted to serve you in any way that you wish.
Inshallah, inshallah. So, Amu Parviz and me will be having a conversation tonight on the topic that we have chosen, which is regarding Islamic philosophy and also mysticism. Now, when we are speaking of this topic, let me introduce you about Tradisi first, which is our organization. So, here we are. This organization is dedicated to the study of Islamic philosophy, and tonight we invite Amu Parviz to be with us, on which we will be having conversation on Islamic philosophy and mysticism. We will be having conversation, and after that, we will be allowing everyone to interact with him, to ask him questions regarding our topic tonight, inshallah. So I will be starting my first question with you, Amu Parviz. So when we are talking about Islamic philosophy and also Islamic mysticism, what are the differences, and how do you define Islamic philosophy, Islamic mysticism, and also the differences between them?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the center and the distinguished audience for their time. And first of all, I'd like to begin my method. I make a distinction between meta language and object language. For example, there are different interpretation of Islamic philosophy, and there are different interpretation on mysticism. So what I like to offer is just one model, but there could be many other models. First of all, if we make a distinction between breath, nafas, and then between mind, damak, or brain, and then the heart. Religion is analogous to the breath. We depend like nafas. So we kind of submit to the one. Philosophy, we try to analyze an interpretation. And mysticism, I like to make a distinction between nature and religious mysticism. Religious mysticism is more like Wahdatul Wujud. It doesn't necessarily assume any particular religion. In religion, you kind of submit to destiny. In philosophy, you analyze. In mysticism, you incarnate. You hulul, kind of a phases of self-realization, like allegory of the cave, maqamat and ahwal. So I like to put these three as three dimensions of the literature. For example, Ibn Sina has works on philosophy, on science, and he has on mysticism. Now, sometime in mysticism, you use allegories, or in philosophy, you use the axiomatic method. And in religion, depends on the religion that you have. So I would say that there is no, we cannot talk facts, we can talk about facts. So there are different readings of Islamic philosophy, mysticism, and theology, religion. And I like to propose this in analogous of the nafas, aql or damag, and heart. For example, in religion, you have directives. Thou shalt do this and that. In philosophy, you seek validity. In mysticism, nature mysticism, you reach harmony. However, the word irfan, which is your center's name, is used in many different ways. Sometimes it's used in reference to God. For example, there's a Persian poem, Barg Darakhtan Sabz Dar Nazare Hushar Har Baraqash Daftaris Marifat Kirdagar. So the irfan in that sense is a gnostic or interpretive. Now, for example, Ibn Sina, he has the categories, maghulat. He says, instead of saying there's one category, you can interpret categories as a topic in themselves. And you can use them as a tool for sciences. So I would say that I recommend that you use philosophy and mysticism and religion for a particular application. And following kind of John Dewey, in my interpretation, you look at the actual world like 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐞𝐰𝐞, you see what the world is, and then you make a interpretation to that. As a matter of fact, Nasir Khosrow, he said that the religion and science have the same subject. Religion is 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐞𝐰. What a wonderful world that is. And philosophy, science attempts to understand the working by making laws. So both of them have the same object. So I like to recommend that, first of all, you use philosophical models to interpret ordinary language. And then for each particular case, you apply that in that case.
MashaAllah, is very insightful. It is a very amazing answer to the question, what is Islamic philosophy and what is Islamic mysticism? And I believe that everyone gain benefit from that answer, inshallah. So we'll be moving on to the next question, which I believe which is related to the study of Islamic philosophy and also Islamic mysticism. So as like you said, Islamic philosophy, religion, and mysticism are actually three interrelated topics, which you said that,
there are really different interpretation of mysticism. For example, the mystical experience. And my field and a specialty is a abstract, logical model that brings mysticism as a kind of a meta-philosophy, like Whitehead would say, meta-philosophy. For example, the greatest mystics like Plato and Plotinus, they were rationalists. So I disagree with 𝐷𝐸𝐥𝐚𝐫𝐸𝐿 and with 𝐏𝐚 and many that they take mysticism as irrational. And I think is a kind of a perspective of the whole world. So mysticism can be, the way I like to study it is, for example, the unity of being, the way of salvation, the icons of mystical sign, and its application to particular life in terms of not negative but positive. Here's an example. There is no doubt that Islam, as Pew Population Research says, it will be, by the year 2050, 3.5 billion, where the Jews would be 16 million, and for example, and eventually the Muslim will surpass the very likely the Catholics and become the most popular. In this sense, we have to see how this growth brings a problem to other people. Because those people who believe in hegemony of the West, or they take Islam as something negative, we have to worry about them. We have to make him calm. So Islamic philosophy, Islamic knowledge, love, wisdom, and action are the same. You have to love, and love in mysticism is to receive the beloved unconditionally, kind of rida. And so we have a problem to make sure that other people are not afraid of us. We have to reach out to them. So nothing negative about other people. Always look for the positive thing. For example, the military power of Islam should be reminded that Muslims are really interested in peace, and you kill one person, you kill the whole humanity. So we should tell them that the karama, the lutf of God, is that the Muslim have received that, and they're not something against that. And also, here's one thing I like to mention. Aristotle said, all who studied history and science, they know that the fate of empires rests on education of the youth. The most important thing we should do is to make sure, women especially, because they're the mothers of our children, that women receive the highest possible support for education. And I think and one more thing, there is an interpretation that the surah can be divided into the Mecca period and Medina period. And some people say all of the surah after the Hijrah belong to Medina period. And now with ijtihad, we have to make some kind of a revision in which the Asians, especially the Chinese, that we don't expect them to convert, that we would support them, some kind of a harmony, that we work with them. For example, Mormons are very much interested in family values. So we can support Mormons with family values. So in this sense, I recommend that we look at the needs of people and satisfy that, and we act like a mother to the world, so they will not be afraid of Islam. And they should be afraid, because their hypothesis of hegemony is based on pre-Hegel interpretation of history. in 16th, 18th century that all civilization rests on the West and Western have a hegemony all over the world. So in this sense, if we tell them, for example, Islamic values like family values, love of mathematics, to be very clean, for example, ecology, nature, all of these things are something for them. So in this sense, I think we should interpret Irfan for other people the way they understand it. You see, as Rumi said, "Har kasi az zind khud shud yar man." You kind of become others and attempt to become them and care for their parents in the same way that you feel to your children and your spouse and your parents in old age. You have to feel other people. In this way, Islam will be you see, the meaning of Islam is what? Salama, that you have the Sharia, the right path, the truth, the healthy way. So in that sense, the healthy way means the successful way. So we're not asking anybody to change herself or himself, but to recognize with us what is the nature, the tabiat, the fitrat, and you develop that. So we have to show love and kindness, and that's really the meaning of Irfan.
MashaAllah. That's amazing answer. I'm interested to know more when you said about the education. So when we are talking about Islamic philosophy and also Islamic mysticism, what are the domains and methodologies that we can use to study them correctly and rightly?
Well, it depends on the need and application. For example, in case of therapy, anytime you feel hate towards someone, you recognize that's your problem. So you, like Zen, you turn negative into positive. And in that sense, Islamic philosophy can be interpreted, Islamic mysticism. Islamic philosophy, of course, it has many different meanings, but obviously the classical distinctions of the type of sciences that we have, and the theoretical sciences and practical sciences and the poetical sciences, the making. So in theoretical, you have metaphysics and logic, physics, and etc. So you have that division. Something is interesting. Philosophy cannot be defined because philosophy deals with definition. And philosophy and love are very much related. A philosophical attitude is best understood in a way that the mother feels internally the child's needs, that there is a unity between a person and the object. And so mysticism, I like to say one feature of it is no otherness. I remember Plotinus, who is one of the greatest mystics, he wanted to show how the soul, nous, reaches the one, Toan, naps to the one. He says, at last, the soul realizes that is like a daughter who recognizes that her ultimate love and foundation and truth is the Father, and she wants no otherness with him. I want to repeat that, no otherness. It's not the Judaic I and thou. It's not the philosophy that God is transcendent. Is no otherness. So mysticism is a natural seeking to have no otherness. And if you're a poet, you get lost in your poetry. And if you're an artist, you get lost in your art. If you're a cook, when I cook for people, one of my hobbies, making different food, Chinese food and something, I get lost in the recipe. That no otherness. In this way, mysticism allows you to transcend your particular self and have a glimpse of the divine, glimpse of the Tawheed. And it's interesting, Nasiruddin Tusi has a special work on philosophy that he gets rid of the maqamat and he just have the ahwal. And the last hall is recognition, not discovery. Recognition that you are to the one as a rays of sun, as a ray of light to sun, as a drop of water to the sea. So this de-alienation, I'd like to mention something else. When you deal with Westerners, according to Western thought, alienation, faraq, Rumi talk about. Alienation is the greatest problem that Marx, Freud, Heidegger, Sartre, everybody talks about. And we also do that in faraq. So if you have mysticism or irfan as de-alienation, as an example, in this way, for example, your love of the center and your labor with the center makes you connected to the one. So this is what I recommend to use alienation, de-alienation that the Westerns can understand. You have to use their language in order to communicate with them.
Thank you, Abu Parviz.
Yes.
I'm thinking of a question. Now, when we are talking about Islamic mysticism here, can we identify it with Sufism? And does this Sufism actually traces its teachings back to the Plotinus?
Well, would Plotinus, you mean?
Plotinus.
Plotin. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, a distinction between Plato and Plotinus that I like to stress. Plotinus put the good above beauty, but for Plato, they're the same. That's a major distinction. And in this respect, I take Platonic view that beauty and good are the same. That's number one. Now, what is interesting, Plotinus, first of all, Plotinus emanation, and since the Toan, the one is not a substance, Johar, allows mystical union. You see, in Aristotle, because the unmoved mover is a substance, Johar, you cannot have one substance united with the other substance. In order for you to have union, you have to have processes. That's why Ibn Sina's 𝐌𝐸𝐥𝐻 is not a substance. So Sufism has this Plotinus's emanation and return, which allows tahleel, going back to hal, ta'awwul, going back to the one, tahrir, going to haq. So Sufism could be interpreted, well, I use it basically, I approach it logically. I would say there are religious and nature mysticisms. And in nature mysticism, you have certain cardinal pattern. The unity of being, وحدة الوجود. The tariqah, way of salvation. The mediator figure. The icons of mystical expression, like leitmotif, like water and fire growth. So mysticism uses the language of allegory, misal, in order to transform you from alienated to de-alienated, from faragh to tahleel. So in that sense, the mysticism, in my interpretation, I'd like to propose that, is nature mysticism, is the one that has the tahleel in it. And some of it is in Quran. Of course, every religious text, you have that. You have it in the Ezekiel, you have it in the book of Revelation, you have it in Quran, and you have the leitmotif all over.
Inshallah. I want to continue my question. Inshallah. So, Prof, in your view, what is the contemporary relevance of scholarship in Islamic philosophy and mysticism for general education?
Yes. Well, every religion is an ijtihad. It's a new challenge. When Muhammad and Moses and Jesus, Isa, they were revolutionaries. They were like Nietzsche. They changed, they came to set a new pattern of society. I think right now, one of the things that we have to do in Islam, we have to deal with femininity. I think we have to empower women in a sense that Muhammad himself empowered Khadija, in that sense, that we have to recognize the power of motherhood, and we have to educate women. We have to pay for women's education, and male have to be more motherly in order to allow a woman to develop so she would be a better mother for children. So one task is that society, I remember Ahmadinejad, one of Iranian president, he paid a lot of money, millions of dollars, to have women from the farms to study sciences, to become electrical engineer, to become mathematicians, and so on. So in that sense, the general education is very important to put the woman as a topic. This is one. Secondly, we have to deal with the reality of China. We have to deal reality that all indicators shows that this is the Chinese century, PRC. We have now in China, I've been to China many, many times, and I work with the government of China and did put Marxist language in mathematical terms and something. We have to know that actually there are many more Muslim in China than it appears. So we have to deal with the Chinese government and Chinese mentality, Confucius mentality, which is very close to Islam and to Plato, that your primary priority is the societal self, is 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐸 in that sense. So one of them is to deal with China and somehow forget about the fact that they're not monotheist. Attempt to have a ijtihad in which we would take a kind of a Mormon view and the Sikh view that I want you to take my religion, but if you don't, I will defend you to right to practice it with your life. This is one thing. And also among Christian, they're Mennonites who are very, very special. They're the people who are against war, and they're willing to go to jail or serve in other types of war. So there are Christians in America and all over the world that have that. So China is a major issue. One other thing, the Russian culture is very rich. No one can deny the majesty of St. Petersburg and Hermitage, that if you see any object for 2 minutes, it takes you 90 years to see it. So we have to accept Russia and China as a reality. This is something that our Western friends justifiably are afraid and attempt us to become anti-Chinese and anti-Russian. But one cannot be a Muslim and anti-anything. The Muslim receives the haqiqat and works with that. So I think that the China, Russia, women education, and also the notion of Islam has to transcend the original source in Mecca and Medina. It has moved to not make a genetic fallacy, move to Indonesia, to Malaysia, and to some countries with minority Muslim like India, and then some country that as active Muslim, like France and England, and also some country in which the number of Muslim population is going up, and that is Italy, for example. Italians love women, Italian male love women, and they sing for women, but at night they go to mama, who gives them pasta instead of going to their wives and children. So I think these are some of the things. But major thing is that the Muslim students should become aware that this is a very important time of their life, that they can guide others. Ahdina Salat al-Mustaqim, guide others and not oppose anybody, not to become against anybody. For example, Socrates and death as an example.
I'm interested when you speak about Muslim students. Now, do you have any recommendations for students who are actually interested to learn more about Islamic philosophy and mysticism?
My feeling is this, that we have to doctor up Islamic philosophy and mysticism in their language. For example, in Book of Job, 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐤𝐲, we can discuss. By the way, this is a book that Victor Hugo said if he were going to burn all books, he would keep one. He would keep 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐤𝐲 because it shows human suffering. So we would show them that this, and we show, for example, I'm giving several talks on Mary, the Virgin Mary, or the feminine in Islam, in others, problem with sexuality, problem with disease, problem with health. So I think that we should not exclude a student just to do Islamic, because then the range will be small. We have to look for the largest audience. So if we take Islamic friendly topic and discuss that with general community, that would be the best way in order to, propagate Islam. And it's very easy. Islam means to do the right thing. So logically, we're not asking anybody to convert Islam. We just ask them to convert to the reality, the tahqiq, the ta'leel of what they are in fact. For example, motherly love is a source of therapy. That unconditioned love that the Mennonites have towards saving humanity, for example, toward life. So in this sense, I think that we have a big task ahead of us, and you also are doing some of that. However, I think it will be safer if you connect yourself to some governmental agency, like Ministry of Education or Ministry of Culture or some university. And in this way, the university can invite visitors and pay their expenses, and they could Zoom with you on the side. So this is a non-Muslimic example, piggyback, camelback, to come on that. So that's what I feel. And I heard that there's a young lady affiliated with you who's taking a doctorate at Columbia University. I think we look forward to see her. My wife, Dr. Rosemary Morewedge, has done a lot of teaching all over the world. And she has taught for Asia Bank, for example, the Western education. So we can assist her to begin that. Well, we can begin with the embassy, the UN mission of Malaysia in New York. And our office is 1 block to the UN. And it's very large. We can hold meeting here, and we can Zoom to the people in political science, religious studies, diplomats, clergy, and expand the center.
MashaAllah. I believe this is a very not only good but also beautiful suggestion that we will be taking into our consideration, inshallah. This is the last question that I would like to ask before opening the floor to the audiences to interact or ask questions, inshallah. So, Amu Parvis, can you summarize your major contribution to the field of Islamic philosophy and mysticism? And in
Well,
the future, how would you like to contribute more towards this field?
well, I have it in the outline. I've taught 57 years, and I held conferences all over the world. And I publish 14 books and edited and published 70 reviews for Oxford University, for Cambridge University, and taught almost all over the world. And also, I was the head of the Global Study Publication. He published 500 books and many journals. And I also work with individual students, individual faculty, and I work with ancient Greek philosophers and medieval, and organize for 30 years conferences in America and many all over the world. And I also have been an intimate friends of many students and scholars, and attempted to empathize with them and have change in their lives. So at this moment, I'm giving many lectures and Zooms in different things, and my email is available, and I will be very happy to assist any student or faculty by email, or if they're in New York City, I'd like to invite them to my house or apartment, which is 1 block to UN, and we will continue our search. And this gives me a chance to cook for them too, and show you my specialty. Yes.
MashaAllah. I think that is a very beautiful conclusion to our conversation today. But it is not the end of our program yet. We are opening the floor to the audiences to ask questions regarding the topic that we have just conversed about. So everyone who wanted to ask, you can directly open your microphone, use your microphone.
Any question, you're welcome.
All right. So Prof. Amu Parvis give us the permission for any questions. So please use this chance to interact with him, to ask him, inshallah. We are opening the floor. Well, I believe here there is a question that is sent to me through private message from Mr. Jamizal. He asked 2 questions actually. Firstly, he asks, how the metaphysics of Plato and Plotinus can help us to achieve freedom and also hierarchy. I try to translate the question, inshallah. How the metaphysics of Plato and Neoplatonism can balance the issue of freedom and hierarchy to produce a just society.
I have done much work on that, and I published much on that, and I'd like to discuss that with you. First of all, Nasiruddin Tusi has an answer to that, to free will and determinism. To begin with, there is a distinction between occurrent properties, like a salt is soluble in water. Salt is white, and dispositional properties. If you put it in water, then it dissolves. Okay? Free will is not anything that you can point to, like a liver or the heart. So the context of use of free will, by the way, this is a method that Hume used for causality, and to see that. One of it is when you feel free. Secondly, when you attribute free will to someone else. Now, you feel free when you desire what you have to do. Like if you have to drink water, and you drink water, and you have to go to the bathroom and you do that, or you sleep, then you feel free. So free will is a psychological, zihni, interpretation of your imaginable power with the actual result. Like a lady feels free when she wants to have a baby and she's under 45. But after that, she doesn't feel free. So free will, with respect to your interpretation, is a psychological state. With respect to other people, is when you don't understand the causes. For example, you don't know why did Putin got involved or continued, according to his interpretation, the Ukraine event. If one understands Putin's mentality and understand the mother Russia and that feeling of national sorrow and unity, then one could predict that he would do that. So, free will in others is due to not understanding the causes. For example, if my spouse is unhappy, I feel she's unhappy, my first interest should be is what are the conditions that makes her happy and unhappy? I don't say she wants to be unhappy now. It's the same that Hume thought. So I would say free will and determinism are meta-linguistic psychological thing. Incidentally, Tolstoy in War and Peace. In the epilogue, it says, free will is the essence of life, but it's an illusion, which is very interesting. That what does it mean? Free will is essence of life. It's an illusion. I thought that I'm free to become a professor. I had a job as a computer engineer for General Motors, designing computers and mathematician. But I changed that and became a professor. And when I analyzed it, is because my father was a professor. My grandfather was a professor. My great-grandfather, 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐸𝐸, they were all professors. So in that sense, I really had no other choice. It was not possible to choose anyone, even if I thought to. So free will is an illusion. And Spinoza, Schopenhauer, Plato, Leibniz, all of these great philosophers, they question free. In this way, we can use that in Islam. We could say, why is it that New York Times and CNN, NPR are against Muslims? Why is it that certain minorities are against Muslims? And we put ourselves in their place and said there was really no other time. For example, given the voting makeup of American electorate, it's impossible to be in favor of Islam and get elected. So they're not free to do that. So we understand, incidentally, one of the interesting things that you discover, you ask yourself, what are you free to do that? Now, there's certain things like fate, qadar, like death. You can elongate life, but eventually is death. So you could say to some extent, you're able by diet, by exercise, by healthy living, you elongate it. So I think that the question of free will and determinism lead us to knowledge. And with knowledge, you solve that. That's what I suggest.
MashaAllah.
But I'll be very happy to send several articles dealing with this topic that I wrote and some text. So you're welcome to email me. I'll send it by attachment.
Thank you, Prof, for your kindness. For the audiences, I would like to announce that Prof email is in the chat section. So you can use that email to ask him or to maybe ask for his suggestions and so on, inshallah. We have another question.
Visit me in New York or visit me in the apartment. Yeah.
Yeah. And you are all also invited to meet Amu Parvis, inshallah.
Sure, because they are part of reality, and the reality is not to be judged, but to be accepted.
Inshallah.
That's the meaning of Reza.
Yeah, Reza, inshallah.
We have to understand today in geopolitics and demographical change, what are the options open to Muslims? and accept that.
Subhanallah. We have another question here from Mr. Jamizal. He asks, Prof, what is the distinction between emanation and tajalli? Is there any differences? And what is the truth actually?
Okay. First of all, in my methodology, I agree with Dewey and not Russell that truth doesn't apply to theories. Theories are recommendation. They are tar. Now, emanation in cosmogony that deals with God, there are three logical possibilities. Creation out of nothing, co-eternity like Aristotle, and emanation. Okay? Now, in mystical emanation, Sufic emanation, the measure is incarnation, that you incarnate the haq through series of revelations. The tajlili idea is a very interesting one, and the best philosopher on that is Spinoza. According to Spinoza, imagine the world is like an ocean, then you're like a wave. Now, Spinoza got this data from Maimonides, who criticized Ibn Sina, and he got that from Maimonides' understanding of philosophy was with Aristotle as Ibn Sina interpreted. So, Tajlili is the idea that every activity demonstrate epiphany reality. For example, Leibniz, by the way, also got it from Spinoza, had the same idea. My feeling is this: when you look for psychological peace, if you're upset about death, sickness, or passing of friends, or existence of a non-halal food in a restaurant that you need, then you look at things in Tajlili way. That after all, this is how the cookie crumbles. And it's a variation of a theme by Paganini. That's what it is. When you look at the idea of unity of being, you have to understand that according to Aristotle's logic, substances cannot be united. So you have to have a non-substance, like Ibn Sina's Wajibul Wujud, Plotinus's one, in order for it to have return. So if you want to, for example, if a young man or woman is going to the army, military, you have to say, look, the whole nation is like a body part. Bani 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐸𝐥𝐻𝐚𝐫𝐸𝐿, one part. And you and the country are one. So if you defend the country, it's almost like a player game who won the game. There are no individuals. You have to look at it in emanation, that you came from one and you go back to one. You can look at it that way. So tajlili and emanation are different languages to use in order to answer everyday life experience. That's how I take it.
Thank you so much, Amu Parvis. I see here Nuruddin raised his hand. I believe that Nuruddin wanted to ask. Nuruddin, go on, inshallah.
Can you hear me, Brother Sued?
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, okay, yes. Good night, Professor. Nice to see you. Very interesting discussion. I have two questions, Prof. My first question is, you discuss a lot about the role of women, Prof. I want to ask, Prof, what your opinion about feminism, especially Western feminism. And I wonder, I'm curious, is there any female Muslim philosopher in classical era, in the age of Avicenna or Ibn Rus or something in that era, female Muslim philosopher? I never heard any name. In Sufism, for example, we can hear the name of Rabi al-Adawiyah, but in philosophy, who can you give a name?
Well, if you look at the statistics, okay, like I have been teaching for 57 years, and since I was an engineer, I teach logic, symbolic logic. In my 57 years, I never saw any intellectual distinction like female logic versus male logic. Also, as Plato and Islam teach, gender deals with the physical aspect of a human being, whereas spirit or mathematics or mind deal with the mental aspect. And there is very difficult to show causal connection between the biological organs and mental ability. So I think that what Plato said, he kind of refuted the logical possibility of meaningfulness of gender distinction. He says a human being is emphasized by the mind. And since the gender relationship, the gender fact has nothing to do with it, so it's illogical to point to a human being as a man or a woman in a priority sense. Now, there are three logical views of gender and personality. The first is Plato and Islam, in which the gender. The second one is Jungian view. According to Jungian view, there are feminine archetypes and masculine archetypes, like trees, rivers, countries, ship, etc. And the gender symbolism, like a motherhood, has protection and releasing, whereas the male gender has other things. The third one that I like to recommend is Taoism. In Taoism, the language is in terms of power, qudrat, faith. So in our experience, for example, in marriage, usually the woman in traditional marriages, not modern marriages, was begin to be passive. But very soon, she begins to take over. to finance the house, and if the man is wise, will let her have that. So male, female is secondary to the yin-yang, the passive active. Now, recently, there are more philosophers, women philosophers, than before. There are certain philosophers, like the one who has the idea of feeling. So slowly, the number of philosophers are more available now because the opportunities are more. So I think we will see. However, if we don't educate people in philosophy, and I think a major task of philosophy is skepticism. Is follow Plato that there's a distinction between belief and knowledge. Because you can have belief that is false, but you cannot have knowledge that's false. So I think Hume and Plato and Leibniz, these philosophy is something to be taught. And I think that the gender issue is a very important one. And we should begin with, and usually countries are judged by two factors. One is how much money they spend in art, that how much the society recognizes art also as techne, not only honar. In that sense, that's the first topic. Secondly, whether women have meaningful role. For example, in Iran, in spite of the hijab, many heads of physics department or computer sciences or military are women. Incidentally, I'd like to mention something about that. The Huntington Bernard Lewis racial misinterpretation of reality was that the West should not allow modernization without Westernization. That we should only have atomic energy if we're part of the NATO, for example. See what I mean? That we should only have military production like drones only if they're part of the Western thing. But in Japanese architecture, some architects go from the ancient time to modern time, and Western and the Islamic notion or majority of notion should go from their own heritage to what is needed in the future without necessarily go through Westernization. By Westernization, I mean things like not family values, for example, and not respecting the elders. And the second question?
Oh, yes, Prof. I want to know, Prof, about some people or some scholars claim that the Islamic philosophy dead after Averroes or Ibn Rus, and some says that yes, it's still alive but only developed in Persia. What do you think, Prof, about the claim about the death of Islamic philosophy after Averroes?
Well, if for Westerners, they were interested in interpreting Aristotle, and the texts that were available to them was Arabic and Syriac translation of those. So Ibn Rushd's value. However, there are many philosophers. For example, there's Mullah Sadra, there is Mirza Ahmad, and Islamic philosophy. If we define Islamic philosophy as philosophical writings in countries where the majority were Muslim or substantial minority are Muslim, then in that case, it has never stopped and will go on and on forever. I think it's like motherly love or going to the bathroom or eating or sleeping. Philosophy is an activity of wonder, of asking a question. And there are issues for death and life and love, happiness and sorrow. And all of these are natural. Well, I remember when I'm teaching, I taught 57 years. One instructor that we had, he took New York Times to his class. And he said, take any topic. And he discussed it, and then he moved it to philosophical dimension of it. So I think philosophy is not privilege of few. I mean, that's one interpretation, elite interpretation. My interpretation, philosophy is a natural activity of human mind. And I have never met a person in my 89 years of experience, and I've been in 24 countries, 1,000 cities, who wasn't able to appreciate a philosophical issue. Just ask them about what do they think are responsibilities, if any, and how you discuss the change of your relationship with your parents. Or how do you evaluate the fact of death? You know? And these questions, or love, or do you think the justification for your assumption that something is good or bad? So there are natural abilities. There are always jobs for philosophers because I think Socrates also meant philosophy is a way of asking questions rather than answers. Because usually a question leads to other question. You know, like when one falls in love, you achieve something, and then there's a next issue. Children, and what about their success and future? So on. Incidentally, there's a theological issue here. Can we have a mind if we know the future? If we know the future, then time goes further because time deals with that doubt. Now, if God supposedly is omniscious, what kind of a mind can God have if there's no temporal dimension? That's an interesting topic that you can write dissertation on, and I have 50 sources for you. More business for you.
Yes. Thank you, Prof. Very interesting discussion.
Any other questions?
Interesting topic.
Inshallah, it's very interesting conversation between Nuruddin and also Amu Parvis. So we are still opening the floor to the audiences to interact with Amu Parvis, or wanted to ask him questions, or
Who is the person?
no, I'm just giving an announcement.
Oh,
Yeah, inshallah. We are still opening the floor to the audiences. I have a question, Prof.
yes.
In one of the initiatives that Tradisi wanted to that this center wanted to do, we wanted to translate some philosophical texts. What if we translate some of your books into Malay? Would you allow it for us?
Yeah. Well, I have some new ideas, I think. And one of them is kind of a global mapping of Islamic agenda that goes beyond history and beyond boundary. That it is a many facets. It's almost like a imagine there is a mirror and the sun shines in that mirror and the mirror shines back all over the world. And I think that the Islam should be taught that Islam should be taught in that way. You are most welcome to translate any of my work to any language or interpret it any way. And I give, with this Zoom, I give right to all individual to have any right to translate anything that I have. In this sense, I'm a Marxist, or like Ali, everything belongs to the people. So you're welcome to the. I think that in Metaphysics of Avicenna, in the book that was my dissertation at Columbia University Press and Rutgers Paul and UNESCO, I showed that Ibn Sina has two versions of philosophy. One for normative aspect, like intentionality, ethics, morality, politics, and one for the standard philosophical public, like Plotinus and Porphyry and etc. And that shows for Ibn Sina, and I like to teach that, is that the philosophy I like to propose could be, beside other way, a method of formulating questions in a way that would be useful for new applications. For example, Islam should be interpreted in a way that would be useful for the 22nd century issues like ecology, like population, demographic change, family issues, lack of children, and emotional issues that people have, and war, and the need for war. So that is what I recommend that you seek, that kind of a assist to Tamir, to seem to help the world by using Islamic philosophy and be able to change your language in a way that other people understand it.
Inshallah. I believe that is a very great suggestion that we'll be taking into our consideration, inshallah. We have here one question also by Nuruddin. In the chat, he said, Prof, what is your view on the term Islamic science, which was popularized by Nasser to refer to science developed by Ibn Sina, for example? Can this be a separate study or a sub-study in the study of Islamic philosophy?
You mean what are the new topics in Ibn Sina? I didn't understand.
Islamic science.
What? Islamic science, yes.
What is
Islamic
your on Islamic science?
Yes. Well, I wrote something particularly on that. First of all, it's interesting that if you study Qanun al-Tib that Ibn Sina has, for Qanun al-Tib, what Ibn Sina does, he puts a box in the middle, and he considered Tib as a kind of a study of input and what output you have. For example, if you have cold, how do you get rid of that? You drink hot 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐶𝐽. You hold a teddy bear. You wear a sweater. You move to Central Africa. Turn on the heater. So he avoided causal connection. So the medicine for Ibn Sina was a isomorphism between input and output. And that's exactly what modern sciences is. Like, for example, today, people no longer discuss, is materialism correct or mentalism? The question is this: what kind of sentences do you have? What kind of mechanism you have that translates languages that use material terms that are spatiotemporal in a language that is not? So there's no truth or reductionism, that whether this is caused by that. Because when you have cause, as Ghazali and Hume pointed out, and the Greek skeptic, you don't get anywhere. So Ibn Sina has a very scientific isomorphism between, he has a model, his Qanun al-Tib is a very excellent model of that. Also, Nasiruddin Tusi, whose father, of course, student of Ibn Sina, in his design of cosmology, he promoted the Tusi cycles that shows that the motions that are observed, which supposed to be circular, are in kind of a base. So he also used that. So Islamic, I think one of the original things that Ibn Sina did and Nasir Tusi did, for example, he talks about Arif, Abid, and Alim. Different ways that knowledge appears. So he's very careful not to creating. Here's his masterpiece. According to Plato, the universals, in some sense, are real in themselves. What Ibn Sina said, when I say I have 4 fingers in front of me, I don't say I have fingers and number 4. So number 4 is not an extra entity that adds to the fingers. So he had a very interesting, and also I think that his Risale Ser Qadar, the secret of destiny, that the happiness, salvation is a temporal mental attitude. Is not a physical thing to achieve. So I propose that you study. If you wish to do that, you mail me and I will send you about 40 different topics that are new in Islam. For example, Mullah Sadra, his idea of substantial motion, Mir Damad, re-notion of time, Biruni, Indian notion of time, and Nasir Khosrow on existence and time. So there is a tendency, if you take a tiger to a village that they only have cats, they say this is a ferocious cat. If you take a tiger to a village that they only have lion, they say this is a tame lion. The same way people are interested in Judaic studies, like Alfred Avery, Len Goodman, and so on, they interpret Ibn Sina and Wolfson from Judaic perspective. And those who are Christians, they take it from Christian perspectives. So you have to be very generous when you have these very, what is obviously misinterpretation. You would say, if you assume only Judaism, then Philo, for example, is a source, but Philo comes from Plato in that sense.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nuruddin, for your question just now. And thank you so much, Amu Parvis, for your answer, which I believe is very beneficial and insightful, not only to Nuruddin, but also to other audiences here, inshallah. So with a deep heart, I need to announce that we will be closing the Q&A session, the question and answer session, to give way to our audiences in Malaysia to rest, because it's already 10:30 p.m. here and it is close to midnight, inshallah. So firstly, I would like to thank Amu Parvis for his willingness and kindness to be with us tonight, which I believe that is his knowledge has benefited us all, our audiences tonight. And Tradisi would like to thank you deeply, and also to the audiences. Tradisi would like to thank for your willingness to join us tonight in this insightful conversation with Amu Parvis. We have left the email there for you to contact Amu Parvis on any issues that you would like to ask him, inshallah. So before we close, Amu Parvis, do you have anything that you would like to advise us?
I'd like to say that the director of the center sent me a name of a young lady who's related to your center, who's taking her PhD in political science at Columbia University.
Yes, yes.
Nice to introduce. My father and I taught there, and he got his doctorate there. Very nice university. If you ask her to contact me, my wife and I will be happy to help her. My wife has had many experiences. For example, she was paid by Asia Bank to teach in Uzbekistan a course on how Western curricula in higher education can be adopted to the Uzbek academic system. And Asia Bank paid for that. And maybe we can assist her to get some funding for herself and for the center. And I want to thank you very much for your time. And I hope that this is a beginning of a lifelong relationship. Tashakkur, Jiddan, Salam.
Jazakallahu khairan kathira, Amu Parvis. Thank you so much. I don't know how to speak in Persian, but I only know how to speak in Malay, English, and Arabic.
I love Malaysia.
Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, I believe that this is not the last time that we will be meeting, and this is not the last time. This is not the last time that we will be inviting you, inshallah. Thank you so much, Amu Parvis, and thank you so much, everyone. Inshallah, the recording will be available later on. We will be posting the recording on YouTube, and we'll be passing on the link to all of you, inshallah. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. And I look forward to our next session.
Inshallah. Thank you, Amu. I would like to stop the recording and I will stop the session, inshallah.